Day 641 of the Trump administration, and the president just wrapped up a rally in Houston, Texas, stumping for, of all people, his old political foe, Senator Ted Cruz.
And I'll tell you what, nobody has helped me more with your tax cuts, with your regulation, with all of the things that we're doing, including military and our vets, than Senator Ted Cruz. Nobody. Ted's opponent in this race is a stone-cold phony named Robert Francis O'Rourke, sometimes referred to as Beto. And he pretends to be a moderate, but he's actually a radical, open borders left-winger. That's what he is.
Earlier tonight, President Trump actually called Senator Cruz, quote, beautiful Ted, before departing for Texas. And let's take just a quick moment to review just how crazy that is.
Matter of principle, and I'll tell you. You are the single biggest liar. You probably are worse than Jeb Bush. You are the single biggest liar.
I don't get angry often. But you mess with my wife, you mess with my kids, that'll do it every time. Donald, you're a sniveling coward, and leave Heidi the hell alone.
Lying Ted. Holds that Bible high, puts it down, and then he lies.
Donald is a bully. The man is utterly amoral.
I think he's crazy. Honestly, I think he's crazy.
This man is a pathological liar. He doesn't know the difference between truth and lies. He lies practically every word that comes out of his mouth.
His father was with Lee Harvey Oswald prior to Oswald being shot. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. What is this, right prior to his being shot? And nobody even brings it up. I mean, they don't even talk about that.
Donald Trump and the man he now calls Beautiful Ted. Tonight, the president once again spoke about this caravan of migrants moving north from Honduras toward the U.S. It's become a favorite topic for Trump as these midterms approach.
As the caravan, and look, that is an assault on our country. That's an assault. And in that caravan, you have some very bad people. You have some very bad people. And we can't let that happen to our country, and it's not. And I was just talking to your great governor and senators, and you were talking about your attorney general, who I'm going to be introducing in a second, but I'm talking to a lot of your people, and they're going to form a wall, different kind of a wall, until we get the other one built. We need a wall built fast.
Earlier today, the president made this claim without any evidence about the caravan, and we quote, criminals and unknown Middle Easterners are mixed in. I have alerted Border Patrol and military that this is a national emergency. He called it a national emergency. Must change laws. Tonight, Ashley Parker, Philip Rucker, and Josh Dawsey of the Washington Post report that President Trump has settled on a strategy of fear laced with falsehoods to motivate Republican voters, and we quote, the president has been especially focused in recent days on a caravan of about 5,000 migrants traveling north to cross the U.S. border, a group he has darkly characterized as gang members, violent criminals, and unknown Middle Easterners, a claim for which his administration so far provided no concrete evidence. The approach in many ways seeks to recreate the 2016 playbook that lifted Trump to the presidency, in which cultural flashpoints and controversies like the specter of mass illegal migration helped energize Trump's supporters. And he saw plenty of that on display tonight in Texas.
Republicans believe we should protect public benefits for truly needy Americans, not for illegal aliens. As we speak, the Democrat Party is openly encouraging millions of illegal aliens to break our laws, violate our borders, and overwhelm our nation. That's what's happening. The Democrats have launched an assault on the sovereignty of our country, the security of our nation, and the safety of every single American.
Meanwhile, some very high-profile Democrats were out on the campaign trail urging people to get out and vote. Vice President Joe Biden in Florida supporting Andrew Gillum for governor and Bill Nelson for Senate. President Obama was in Nevada today supporting Democratic candidates, urging people to head to the polls.
This kind of politics, it's not actually conservative. It's radical. It's a vision that says we're going to protect our power no matter what, even if it hurts the country.
It's about time We began to tell the American story. It's about time we lift our heads up. Get the hell up and take back the country. It's about who we are. It's about dreaming again. Dreaming again. It's about possibilities. Remember, this is the United States of America, unlike any country in the world. And that's not hyperbole. So let's take it back.
Yesterday, Carl Bernstein had this warning about what he's hearing from inside the White House about what could happen if Democrats win.
I talked to people in the White House or in touch with the White House on Friday who believe that if the congressional midterms are very close and the Democrats were to win by 5 or 7 seats, that Trump is already talking about how to throw legal challenges into the courts, sow confusion, declare a victory, actually, and say that the election has been illegitimate.
And now to our lead-off panel on a Monday evening. Sam Stein, politics editor for the Daily Beast, and Carolyn Ryan back with us as well, assistant managing editor for the New York Times and a veteran political journalist. So, Carolyn, what does it say about these midterms that these two guys, let's speak English, who hate each other, were side by side and lovey-dovey at this rally tonight in Texas? What does that say about any of this?
Well, in a midterm, when you have incumbent senators running for re-election, there's always a little bit of a dance. Am I with the president? Or on some issues, do I depart from the president? This is nothing like this. This is acrobatics like we never see. This is somebody who suggested the candidate's father had something to do with assassinating one of the most popular presidents in American history. So what you're really seeing is how important Texas is to the Republicans, but also how important momentum is overall in securing those red states. So you're seeing Donald Trump out a lot. You're seeing Donald Trump assume the stage, dominate the news, and as you pointed out in the intro, really point to issues that helped him 2 years ago. Immigration, which, you know, you have they're really being aided by that visual of a caravan, and he's throwing a lot of falsehoods out there about what is happening. But Democrats, as you know, when you're talking immigration, are usually on the defensive. Republicans like that issue. They like it for their base, and they really want to get those sort of blue-collar Trump voters out. The problem in a midterm is not that your voters might go for the other guy. It's really the indifference. So you've got to mobilize, you've got to energize, and sometimes you've got to scare people, and that's what it seems like they're doing.
So, Sam, let's start with that caravan. The president's out there certainly indicating the Democrats are funding it. Others are straight up saying it's George Soros. No evidence of either one being true. These bad people are going to come for your homes and your family. There's embedded gangsters, embedded vaguely Middle Eastern people. Is that a strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it is a strategy. It's based in, you know, abject falsehoods or just serious lack of understanding of what's actually happening. First of all, this caravan is somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 miles from the border. It's not descending upon the United States, so we should be clear about that. And secondarily, there's just no evidence, even provided by the Trump administration itself, to support the president's assertion that there are, quote-unquote, Middle Easterners within the caravan, as if being from the Middle East is inherently a bad thing, which it's not. So this is, of course, a strategy that Trump uses. It's a strategy based on fear. It's a strategy based on fear of, particularly of brown-skinned people from the southern border coming across and taking over American society socioeconomically. And it has worked for him in the past. Obviously, it worked in 2016. And clearly, the White House feels like, from a political standpoint, this is the type of issue that could be beneficial in the midterm elections. And I will say, just a quick observation on the media coverage today, they have been very savvy at it. They've injected a topic that hasn't been it hasn't been a focal point of the conversation, isn't that pressing of an issue per se, and they made it into national news throughout the course of the day. Now, can they sustain that for 2 weeks? I don't know, because it's not a pressing issue compared to everything else.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.